Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar featuring Actian and Looker, titled Reimagining Customer Analytics for a Competitive Advantage. Just a couple of quick housekeeping items before we get started. First, if you have any issues, technical, audio, otherwise during the webinar, please let us know via the chat panel at the bottom of the Zoom screen. And second, this webinar is being recorded and we'll be sharing the link with you in about 24 to 48 hours after the conclusion of the webinar. If you can move to the next slide, Emma, let me introduce you to our speakers today. We have Emma McGrattan from Actian as our SVP of Engineering at Actian. She leads research and development for Actian's entire product portfolio. Erin Franz is a Senior Technology Alliances Manager at Looker, where she is focused on partner technical integration and enablement. And Bruce Sandell is a Senior Sales Engineer on the Alliances team at Looker. And Bruce has been working with databases and data warehouses for over 20 years and has spent the last 8 years working with big data technologies. If we move on to the agenda, here are the topics we'll be covering today. First, we'll start with just general basics of the customer analytics space, why it's an imperative in today's market to be competitive, and what kind of things we're seeing that we feel you need to reimagine customer analytics and the pitfalls of legacy solutions. And then we'll briefly introduce you to our technologies, Actian Avalanche Hybrid Cloud Data Warehouse and Looker, and how you can benefit from these solutions, and we'll go deeper into use cases and customer stories. And then we'll have a very compelling demo to showcase for you, and we'll close with Q&A. But please feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation by using the Q&A panel at the bottom of the Zoom screen. With that, I'll hand it over to Emma.
Great, thanks, Dahe. So what we're going to talk about today is getting to know your customers and using all of the data that you're collecting about your customers to get a fuller picture in real time as to what their preferences are and how best to retain them as a customer or to sell to new accounts. To do this, we need to deliver on a personalized experience, right, across the industry, and not just our particular industry, but across all of the market verticals that I can think of. Organizations are looking to get to a segmentation of one, where it feels like a very personalized experience when you're interacting with a new company. And we also want to understand customer behavior, right? It's really important to make sure that your customers are satisfied with the services and the products that they're getting from you. And to do that, you want to make sure that they're happy with every aspect of the engagement. And there's different ways of measuring that. And other things you want to do is to prevent, for instance, a customer churning, right? You don't want your customer going to your competition. So if you do lose a customer, it's good to understand what are some of the basically forensics, right? What are some of the steps that you could have identified that perhaps was leading to them churning and then moving to a competitor company? And then building enduring relationships, right? Much easier to keep an existing customer than to win a new one. So making sure that you understand what motivates them, how to keep them happy, how to keep them using your technology or service you're providing or product, super important. So what we see today is that customer analytics absolutely has to change for this modern era, right? We have a lot of different data sources, and we need to take all of the data from those sources in order to be able to get a complete view of our customer. So it's not enough to look at your ERP and your CRM systems to measure your engagement with the customer, because they may be out there tweeting about you. They may, if you're selling products on Instagram, they may actually be expressing an opinion about what you're providing. There's a whole variety of different sources that you need to consider in order to be able to get a complete view of that customer. And bringing all of the data from those sources together is hugely important. Data velocity is changing all of the time, right? We're getting faster and faster data insights, or at least the data from which we should be able to extract those insights. If you think about what 5G is going to enable in terms of the speed at which data is going to come at us, it's going to be really important to be able to address that data in real time. right? So it's not enough to say, I know a customer came into my store today. I need to know as they're walking into the store. I need to know what their preferences are. I need to know, what do their past purchases look like so I can guide them in the right direction so that they're going to, have a successful engagement with me today and buy something that they're going to be really happy with. Variety of sources. I'm talking about, not just, getting an analysis of the sentiment that somebody has on Twitter, but that entire engagement process coming in from social media, from all of the different interactions that they may have with you, whether that's an in-person experience through your website, through maybe, third parties that you engage to represent you, all hugely important. And then the venue, right? We have data in the cloud, we've got data on premises, we've got data in mobile devices. Being able to pull all of that data together to get that cohesive view of the customer, hugely important. We also find that when people are buying analytics and technologies relating to that their purchasing patterns are changing quite dramatically, right? So in the past, for instance, if you were analyzing data, you would typically go and buy a data warehouse, right? And in sizing that data warehouse, you would choose something that was going to be able to handle your peak load. Maybe you're in the retail space and coming up to the holidays is a super busy period. You need to be able to make sure that you can handle the data volumes and the level of interaction with that data that's happening during that peak period. But for the rest of the year, that system is probably running at 20% capacity. So what we find now is that customers want to be able to scale the environment to meet their needs at a specific instance in time, right? So if I'm busy 9 to 5 and I'm not doing anything after 5 o'clock with my data, why should I be paying for it? So we find now that customers want to be able to pay for just what they're using and when they're using it, and to be able to switch off and stop paying for a service when it's not in use. That's hugely important, right? The other huge shift we're seeing is that a lot of our customers want to move from capital expenditure, which is very rigid, right, and very no better word for it, I think, than rigid, to an operational expenditure, right, to OPEX. And an OPEX budget, they can scale to meet the needs of the business, right? So let's say, for instance, that COVID's having a negative impact on your business and you want to scale back your consumption of services, you've got the ability to do that when you're deploying modern solutions. We also find this need for accelerated analytics and to be able to deliver on accelerated analytics for the masses is hugely important, right? You want to have that real-time insights into the data, and you want to provide everybody in your organization that's making a decision for your organization with all of the data that they need to make the best decision possible. So why don't legacy technologies work to address this problem? So the first is that this whole new set of data sources that you need to bring together to get a holistic view of your customer is really hard when you're using legacy technologies. Figuring out all of the data integrations, providing access to things like streaming data, IoT data, and so on is very difficult when you've got a more of a legacy infrastructure. We also find that the performance that's delivered by these legacy technologies really wanes when you deal with large data volumes and large numbers of concurrent users. So being able to address real-time insights into massive volumes of data coming from a variety of sources is really hard to do with legacy technologies. And the other thing is expansion costs, right? So a lot of opportunities that come our way at Actian come from the fact that somebody purchased a data warehousing appliance a number of years ago. At the time, they made a calculation as to how much data they expected to consume over the coming years. That calculation it proved was way off, right? Because data volumes are just increasing all of the time. And we're pretty much every business now is a data-driven business. Nobody wants to throw away any data or not store data in case they're going to need it at some point. So these appliances are filling up a lot more quickly than had previously been thought they would. And it means that as the appliance reaches capacity, you're faced with a decision. Do you buy additional appliance capacity? And now do you have two of these appliances sitting next to each other and figure out how you bring those together and bring the data sets in there together? Or do you offload some of the data, right, maybe to a cloud technology, freeing up some of the space on the appliance? Very complicated decision that needs to be made, and you wind up with a fairly complex infrastructure in order to be able to support that. So we, together with Looker, are reimagining how we're handling customer analytics and how we're delivering this 360 insight into your customers. So if you haven't heard of Actian previously, let me give you a very quick introduction to Actian. We've been in the data space for many decades, right? I personally am celebrating 28 years with Actian next Thursday. So excited for that. We have over 3,000 customers around the world. We provide 24/7 support for those customers, and they love us, right? So talking about this customer satisfaction, right? 95% customer satisfaction coming out of a support engagement with Actian. And when you think about, when the customer has to pick up the phone or engage with your help desk system to handle a support ticket, they're not usually at their happiest, right? But they're coming out of those interactions with us with 95% satisfaction. So we really are great at supporting our customers and having that insight into what they're doing with our technologies. We are really focused on innovation, and we have a focus on performance and price performance. It's hugely important to us. And to do that, we're leveraging a lot of commodity technology using very clever ideas. And we've over 50 patents in our portfolio. So a lot of those clever ideas that my engineers are developing, we've patented. We're in 250 of the Fortune 1000, and we're looking to grow that number every day. What you'll see at the bottom of the screen here are some of our customer logos. I love the first one on here. I love all of them, but the first one here, University of Oxford, we're being used in the Clinical Trials Services Unit. And for those of you that are tracking what's going on with COVID vaccines, you'll probably recognize the fact that the AstraZeneca vaccine trial is being conducted by Oxford University Clinical Trial Services Unit, and they're using this technology that we're going to be talking about today. So some really important use cases for our technologies, getting real-time insights into real-time data, massively important to our customers. We'll talk a little more about some of these customers later on in the presentation. So what I want to talk to you about is Actian Avalanche, which is our hybrid cloud data warehouse solution, right? So it's a hybrid with respect of you can deploy it in the cloud of your choosing or on premises or a combination of those, whatever makes sense for your business. It's designed for performance. As I mentioned earlier, we'll typically deliver 5 to 100 times the performance of our competitors. Really depends upon who the competition is, what your applications look like, but at least 5 times faster than anything else that you've been using. We've designed it for hybrid deployment, and that's largely because what we're finding is that people have data sets that are springing up in different cloud environments. They have data sets that need to remain on premises because of regulatory compliance requirements, and they're looking for a technology that allows them to span all of those data sets without the expense and the risk of data movement, but to be able to actually address the data sets that they have in place, whether that's across public clouds, on premises, and as I say, a combination of those. And we also recognize the fact that when you start up a data warehouse, one of the first things you want to do is to pull data into that environment. So with Actian Avalanche, we provide connectivity to over 200 data sources out of the box. And what you'll see later in my demonstration is that you can easily expand that set of data sources that you're accessing. And we've designed this for high concurrency. So as I said earlier, being able to deliver real-time insights to the masses, hugely important for Actian and also for Looker. And we do this at a very attractive price point. So a cloud data warehousing solution allows you to scale it as your business needs change. You can scale it up, you can scale it back down again, depending upon your exact requirements. And when you switch it off, you stop paying for the compute resources because you're not using the compute resources. So finally, I think we're going to turn it over to Erin, who's going to talk about Actian and Looker and how we can together deliver upon this smart customer analytics solution.
Thanks, Emma. Yeah, I think this is just a slide to show where Looker fits with Actian. Obviously, you've centralized your data into Avalanche, and then you can put Looker on top of that. In the next few slides, I'll just go over what Looker is. So if we can go to the next slide. The way we describe Looker is that it's a data platform that enables users to get to business insights in an agile, efficient, and governed way. When we talk about Looker and how it differentiates on the next slide, we'll kind of go through 3 pillars. On the next slide. Thanks. So when we talk about Looker and how it works and how it differentiates, there are 3 main things. So first, Looker leverages an in-database architecture. So what that means is that Looker connects to databases, data warehouses, like Avalanche, and doesn't move the data into another server or another application layer. We keep the data in the database and leverage the power and performance of that underlying data warehouse database, data lake, via our semantic modeling layer. So the way that Looker is able to keep data in database is via our LookML modeling language, which is how you define your business definitions in the platform. And LookML is really just an abstraction of SQL. So all the reports, all of the ad hoc exploration, all the applications leveraging those business definitions at the end of the day are being translated into SQL queries that will be executed to the backend database and then just either visualized in Looker as a platform or in a downstream application. And then finally, Looker is cloud native. It's a web application. You just access it via the browser. It makes it really easy to share, and what you'd come to expect to any business tool that you're using. We also have API coverage, so you can do all the functionality of the application from our API and leverage that API to power data experiences elsewhere. Looker can be deployed on the cloud of your choice. GCP, AWS, or Azure, depending on what you're leveraging, similar to Avalanche. So we can go to the next slide. We'll talk more about what you can use Looker for. So, this should look familiar to that, previous architecture slide where you've centralized your data, you've done any ETL, initial transformation to make it queryable in your data warehouse. Connecting Looker there, of course, you can power modern BI use cases through dashboards, reports, self-service data exploration. But in addition to that, and really that data platform piece would come in what we categorize as integrated insights. So bringing data into existing workflows, applications that you're already leveraging. So as a simple example, bringing usage data into your CRM so you can see what accounts are doing within that application, as opposed to having to go back to a BI tool separately to do that. The next category would be data-driven workflows. So taking data directly from Looker to power downstream workflows, like taking an audience that you've curated in Looker and sending that directly to a marketing automation tool to power an email. And then finally, custom applications. So Looker being a web app, you can embed via JavaScript or iframes all of the components of the application effectively. So visualizations, dashboards, Explorer experiences into your own products. Or you can leverage our API and build on top of Looker to really make that experience look and feel however you'd like, but still leveraging, that modeling under the hood through our semantic modeling layer, LookML. On the next slide, we'll just go through, what makes the Actian and Looker partnership so great. So, the first point being fast. Looker's in-database architecture, when used with Avalanche, you're going to get data as real time as the queries are completed on Avalanche. So that's really going to, we go back to some of the strong points of Avalanche as a database itself, leveraging that power and performance without abstracting away from it. Secure, so because Looker is only visualizing result sets, not storing your data is going to remain in the database, and keep that security that you provision there. And then finally, flexible, because LookML allows for transformation at time of query. You don't have to do everything upfront in the database. You can really leverage SQL and the underlying querying power of Avalanche through Looker's platform. And with that, I'll pass it back.
Great, thanks, Erin. Customer use cases, right? So when we talk about customer analytics, there's a whole bunch of different use cases that our customers have adopted it for. We'll start with, I think, very typical customer churn, right? As I said earlier, it's a lot easier to keep an existing customer than to acquire a new one. And identifying, what are the symptoms or what are the issues that led to a customer churning, identifying those early so that you don't lose customers going forward for the same reason that you lost customers, or that you at least have an opportunity to put an offer in front front of them. A typical example would be actually myself, right? I left my cell phone provider because I went to Dubai, and Dubai wasn't covered by their international plan, and they cut off my phone for 5 days. I couldn't contact anybody, and I churned, right? Probably a very easy one for AT&T to figure out, but being able to keep customers hugely important, right? Finding out why they're leaving you, preventing future customers leaving, really important. Pricing analytics, right? What is the market willing to bear for an item, so that you make sure that you're pricing appropriately for the market. You don't want to be left with stock in hand because you've or that you're priced higher than your competition, and you don't want to undersell things, right? Because if there's an opportunity to make some additional margin on the item, you want to make sure that you're getting that. So, being able to understand that your customer demographics, their appetite for a discount, and exactly how you should be pricing goods based upon a whole range of factors, depending on what those goods and services are, massively important in order to be able to win and to keep customers. Campaign optimization, right? So tweaking your marketing campaigns so that they're completely optimized, so that you're targeting the right customers with the right products and solutions at the right time. Micro-segmentation, I mentioned earlier, getting down to this segment of one, right? You want your customers to feel like this is a personalized experience that they have in working with you. Having a complete customer profile, understanding who your customer is, what their purchasing patterns look like, what really appeals to them, and how do you win and keep them, hugely important. And then market basket analysis, right? That's the whole thing about, somebody who's going out and buying yogurts and muesli probably isn't buying a 24 suitcase of beer at the same time. But understanding based upon what your customers are trending towards, based upon a demographic and a point in time, right? It might be that it's very unique. It's the day before Thanksgiving. So the analysis of what's in people's basket is very different to any other day of the year. Figuring these things out is quite important, and using data to do that, obviously, it makes a ton of sense. So if we look at Actian and Looker together and what they can deliver to, in this case, the example we're using is a software company. And what that software company wanted to do was to make their CRM smarter, right? They wanted to have a 360-degree view of the customer. They were using a bunch of different tools to capture all of their interactions with their customer. And they wanted to pull all of that data together so that they could have a smart view of the account. So to begin with, they had siloed teams that were operating on subsets of the data, right? The sales team that were in field sales had their view of the account. Somebody dealing with them from a renewals or support perspective would have a completely different view of the account. Pulling all of that together, hugely important. Also understanding, what are those customers' interactions that are outside of their interactions with you as a company, right? Are they looking at your competitor technologies? What are the projects that they have on the horizon? Pulling all of that together, getting the marketing, the sales, and the product data all together into a unified view was hugely important. They were missing opportunities to improve upon their business, and they didn't know that they were missing these opportunities until they ran some dashboards and using Looker, and immediately they identified, oh, we have a big problem right here. That visualization of what was happening within their data allowed them to really quickly pinpoint where they had a problem, and within minutes that problem was solved. So hugely important to be able to see what's going on in the data, because viewing it from a reporting perspective doesn't always give you the full picture. They didn't have a single view of the customer and the prospect engagements, right? So what they wanted to be able to do was to pull all of their interactions with these accounts together so that there weren't two different parts of the organization selling against each other. They wanted to make decisions based upon the best quality data, right? So data cleansing, data enrichment, and making sure that that data was something that was going to yield in sales or into an existing account or bringing in new customers. And then automating data reconciliation, right? This data quality and data enrichment all needed to be automated. So this company made their CRM system a lot smarter, and they're seeing a ton of success as a result of it. They haven't yet allowed us to share their name, but we'll be happy to do that as soon as they do. The next customer has allowed us to share their name, and this is the AA. For those of you who are in UK and Ireland, you'll probably recognize the logo. For those of you in the rest of the world, this is the Automobile Association in the UK. It started out as a club for people that were using the earliest automobiles to provide them with maps and locations for hotels and so on. But that very much grew into providing things like roadside assistance and car insurance. And what the AA is using Actian Avalanche together with Looker for is to be able to provide real-time quotes to their customers as quickly as possible, but those quotes need to be reliable, right? So when you provide somebody with a car insurance quote, and then you discover after the fact that the car you're insurance, has been in 8 wrecks beforehand and you didn't know about it, or that the driver hasn't been paying their parking and speeding tickets, and that there are some issues in the neighborhood where this car is being parked, you can't find all of that out after the fact and then change or renege on the quote, right? So they need to be able to stand behind these quotes. So they collect a bunch of information before they provide the quote, and then they enrich that information, but they need to do it really quickly. And they use a combination of Actian technologies, bringing in that data enrichment and using Looker for the visualization to make sure that these quotes include things like, it's the car's history record, the driver's driving record, credit records, information about the address that they're insuring, pulling all of that together, providing a real-time quote, and all of this happens in a matter of 2 seconds, right? But pulling those diverse data sources together, hugely important to provide an accurate quote that they can stand behind and that the business can support. So at this point, we're going to switch over to a demonstration because we think seeing the technologies working together is a lot more compelling than listening to us talking about them. So when you come into Actian Avalanche, if you bear with me here, I'm sorry, I thought I'd prepared in advance. When you come into Actian Avalanche, one of the first things that you'll typically want to do is to create a warehouse. I already have 3 that I've populated here, but I'll show you how quickly and easily you can create a new warehouse. So we can give our warehouse a name. We'll call it Looker. We decide on the cloud platform we want to use to create it. We're going to choose Azure in this instance. We'll choose a region. You can probably tell from my accent that I'm from Ireland, so I'm going to choose to create my warehouse in Ireland. The number of Avalanche units, this is the horsepower of my warehouse. I'm going to use this just for a quick test. So I'll go with the smallest that we support, which is a 2 Avalanche unit environment. And then this IP allow list is essentially what we want to do is to, while each customer has their own single tenant environment and there's no chance of data leakage, we provide this extra level of assurance that only people from a specified range of IP addresses can access the environment. So I can use my own IP address here, or I can provide a CIDR block of IP addresses, to allow people across the organization in. I can give this a label so that if I'm using my laptop in multiple locations and getting different IP addresses, I know which one is which. And then we talked earlier about the need to not pay for resources when you're not using them. What Actian Avalanche will do is identify a period of inactivity and shut down the service if it hasn't been used in that period. So it will identify that the last query has finished, it hasn't seen a new query, in this case for an hour, and then it'll automatically shut down the service so that we're not wasting money, right? So at this point I can say create the warehouse and it will go off and it will do that. In the interest of time, I'm not going to do that. But if we come in here to one I've created previously, this one I created on Microsoft Azure. You'll see I created this one with an 8 AU, so 8 horsepower that I'm using here, 8 Avalanche units. But let's say I'm coming into end of year, right? And everybody's maniacally analyzing the data, and they're running lots of reports and dashboards and analysis on this data. And maybe I want to scale it up. To scale the environment, I simply go to another point on this line here. So let's say I want to go to 64 AUs. If I hit save, it will go now and it will scale my environment to 64 AUs. Now we have an Avalanche on Azure separation of storage and compute. So I don't need to move my data around. There's no repartitioning of data that happens here. I'm simply going to spin up additional compute capacity so that I have that extra horsepower to analyze my data at a busy period. People coming into the environment typically don't know where to start, right? So we're going to get to loading data into the environment in a second. But one thing that we did was to populate the warehouse with some what we think is some kind of cool data in advance. This comes from the FAA, and it's airline flight information. And what you'll see here on the left-hand side is that we've got a whole bunch of different tables in our schema. And we also provided some sample queries here. So if I wanted to do something like, say, show me the top 50 flights with the biggest average delays, I can now run that query. And what you'll see is it brings back my data set of results here. We've analyzed 7.2 million records, and we now have our top 50. To the right here, we have some very rudimentary graphing capabilities that are built into the platform. But we also would recommend, to get better insights into that data, you can come into to Looker, running against that same data set. What you'll see is, on time. What you'll see here is that you can get much richer view into the data set. So just some very rudimentary view into the data provided within our tooling. Customers will typically want to be able to drill into the data and do some much fancier things, like seeing this represented as a map and so on. So some really cool capabilities provided by Looker, and Bruce is going to provide you a much more compelling demo than I just did there. But just to show that as you start with your warehouse, it's pre-built with that data. It's got access to some cool visualizations as part of it, and it gives you a chance to play with it, become comfortable with it, and then to bring in your own data and to do whatever you need for your organization. To bring in the data, we go to the integrations tab here within Avalanche. We can start with our very simple desktop data loader. In here, we'll select the warehouse we're going to load the data into. We provide a username and password, give the table a name that we're going to load the data into, and then we'll just browse to a file on my desktop that will very quickly give me the ability to load that data into the warehouse. It will do some clever things like figure out what the data types are for the different columns. So if I have dates or money, it'll figure out all of the different types of data that I have within that file and come up with an appropriate set of data types for each of the columns within the table that we're going to define. And I have the ability, obviously, then to change that if it's not right. And we also have the ability to do batch data loading, and these can be driven by templates. So if I wanted to create my own template, I can start with something from the Actian library of templates. And here I can come in, it'll say things like, oh, do I want to take a delimited file sitting on Azure Blob Storage and load that into Avalanche on Azure? Do I want to take a delimited file that's sitting on S3? Maybe I've got Parquet files. Maybe I want to take data from NetSuite or Salesforce. All of these options are available to you, and you can save these templates, build out your own templates. All of that capability is provided as part of Actian Avalanche. And so if you have, if you think back to the architecture that Aaron shared, where you had a whole bunch of data sources on the left-hand side of the screen, we provide with Actian Avalanche the ability to get data from those sources and to bring it into the warehouse. The last piece on here is our JSON data loader, and this gives us the ability to do some fairly cool things. So while that's starting up here, I'm going to go to the SpaceX site, right? So when we go out to the SpaceX site, we've got some rather cool, it didn't like that for some reason. Hang on one second. This should be the easy stuff, right? Okay, here we have it. So if we go in here to SpaceX launches, they provide a URL through which I can get data about SpaceX launches. This data is all represented as JSON, and what you'll see in here is that you've got the ability to take a quick look through the type of data that's available to us. When we go into the data, the JSON data loader for Avalanche, the first thing that we're going to do is to set up a data source. So I'm going to choose, I've got a web URL. I'm going to choose that as an option. I'm going to call this the Looker demo. I'll come down here and just paste in that web URL that we have for the launches. And then I'll say, okay, add this as a data source. And it's simple as that. Now I've got Looker demo here as a data source. The next thing I'm going to do is to create a table. Let's remind me tomorrow on that. I'm going to create a new table, and I'm going to call that, I'm going to use this Looker demo data source that I've just created. And I'm going to take a look into this data. If you bear with me a second, what this is doing now is it's going out to this SpaceX site. In real time, it's getting more information about that data. Now, when I say I want to take a look at the data, I can see things like, oh, I could find out about the crew. Let's say I'm interested in the launch site. I want to get the launch site name. It'll show me here that the site name is represented as something that looks like CCAFSSLC40. That doesn't mean anything to me. So I'm going to go with the site long name, and that's, oh, look, it's Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. Pick that. That's much easier. So now I'm starting to build my table definition across the bottom of the screen here, right? You'll see that this is being represented as a string, and we're going to call this column in my table site name long. I'm then going to come down to something like the mission name, right? So here I want to take the mission name, and it's fine like this. I can come in here and I can get the local date and time at which that mission launched. Coming down to the rocket, I can find out things like the rocket name. That's kind of cool, and the type of rocket, again, kind of cool. And second stage, right? What did the payload look like? Who was funding that payload? You know, any information I want to get about that, maybe the weight of it in pounds. We'll pick that. So what you see across the bottom of the screen is that we're building up this table definition. We don't have to pull everything from this JSON file, right? We just pull what makes sense for us, what we're interested in querying. We're going to give this a name now. We're going to call it the looker table. Actually, it doesn't need the word table if it's going to be a table, right? So it's going to be looker. So now we have that create. Oh my goodness! I guess I didn't save the name correctly. And then we go to our destinations. So I don't think I saved that correctly. So let's take a look. We're going to download the data. We could. Oh, it did create it. We're going to download the data. We could, in fact, just load this data into Avalanche, but I know that we're all dying to see Bruce's demo. So in the interest of time, I'm just going to show you a sample of that data. So it's going to spin up a copy of Excel with just a sample of that data in it. And as soon as Excel launches here, it's going to launch on the wrong screen, of course. Yep, here we go. We'll move this over here. So now what you'll see in the Excel file, and this is just an extract of the data. We could have taken the entire data set and we could have loaded it into Avalanche instead of into Excel. But what you'll see here is we have the site name, we've got the mission name, we've got the rocket name and the rocket type, and we've got the weight of the payload that it was carrying. All of this now could be saved off as a table, and you can query this data as part of your data ecosystem and make it part of the Avalanche data warehouse on whatever platform you choose. So at this point, we're going to get to the more interesting part of the demo. It's going to be Bruce showing you a lot of what Looker can do. So I'm going to just stop sharing so that Bruce can share. And here we go. Great. Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you, Emma. So as Emma and Aaron have both discussed, there's a tremendous amount of value from centralizing data into a high-performance warehouse. And Avalanche makes it really easy to provide your business users access to data in a really easily consumable way. You can bring in data from lots of different systems. In this case, we're going to be taking a look at sort of a 360 holistic view of how a company is performing. And this is a hypothetical business intelligence company. And we're bringing in data from Jira, Zendesk, Salesforce, and then also product usage metrics about our own product. And we're presenting these in a way that's going to be easy for executives and managers to consume this data. The first dashboard that we're looking at here is just a high-level view of how we're doing in our quarterly performance. And this dashboard may be something that a manager might come in and look at, but more likely you would schedule this to be delivered to your inbox so you can just wake up each day and see how things are going. And then if you see anything alarming, you can click on a link and get straight to this dashboard within Looker. So this first dashboard that we're looking at, the SaaS Pulse, is really just really high-level metrics to show how the business is performing. And then we have links to some more specific dashboards here, and we'll get into those dashboards in just a minute. So when you're working with a Looker dashboard, pretty much anything you see on any dashboard tile, you can take action on. So one of the first things I noticed is that I've lost 15 customers this quarter. And that's a little more than I would have expected. So first thing I can do is just click into this 15. And this gives me a view of where I lost these customers. I can take a look at the table view and see, who these 15 customers are that I lost. So I'm going to go ahead and set an alert, and you can set an alert from any tile in any dashboard. I just want to know if I lose any more customers this quarter. So if this number exceeds 15, I'm going to have an email sent to me. And I could either have this sent by email, or I could have it sent via our Slack integration. And then I have a choice of saving this alert as public. So if other people were interested in it, they could subscribe to it, or private for just my viewing. So as we scroll down here, we'll see that this dashboard is sectioned off sort of based on business area. So our first set of metrics here is based on sales related information. So high level data based on performance for the quarter for sales. And then for customer success. And finally, for our product team. So this is, how people are using the product, what their product usage time is, and number of daily users, and the type of events that they're performing within the product. So just really high level metrics to give you a general feel for how the company is performing. I can see in this chart of biggest wins this quarter, some of our biggest sales that we've made this quarter. And if I want to get more information about any of these companies, I can just drill into them. As Aaron mentioned, Looker's all web-based, which makes it really easy to link out to any other sort of web-based property. So if I click on these ellipses, this is going to give me access to all the different things that we have linked here. I could send an email directly to the customer. I could take a look at this customer's account in Salesforce, visit their website. But what I want to do here is take a look at this company-specific dashboard and just get some more information about that company. So I can see that for this account float, what our current ACV is. I can see, excuse me, that their ARR growth is on a healthy trend. And if we take a look at the account activity, and see that they've opened 9 chat tickets in the last 30 days. So, this is based on the data that we brought in from our Zendesk system. If I want to get more information on those chats that have come in, I can just click on this and I'll get the details on the 9 that they've opened. I can see that all of them are solved. None of them look like they're very serious. But in the case that one of these wasn't resolved yet, I can just click on the Zendesk ticket ID here, and I get the option to make an update to the Zendesk ticket directly from within Looker. So I can go in here, I can change the ticket status, I can add comments, I could change the priority, all without having to leave the Looker interface. All right, so let's move on and we'll take a look at the sales metrics dashboard. So the first thing I want to point out is that we have this dashboard set up so that you can see all of these metrics, either based on quarter to date performance, or you can also set it to annual performance as well, year to date performance. So as we start going through here, seeing how our teams are performing, particularly now that we're getting towards the end of the quarter, I can see that my Inside East team is really doing well, that they've far exceeded their team license goal. My Outside West team isn't doing quite as well. So I'm going to click in here to get a little bit more information. So let's see the details by state here. It's going to bring up this map, and I can see that, they're doing really well in California. They've exceeded their license goal. But in Arizona, for instance, we have a high license goal, and we haven't really won any deals there. So what I'd like to do is just schedule a team planning session. So I'm going to use Looker's calendar integration so that I can schedule some time with the team so that we can address this right away. And hopefully get some activity moving in those Western states before the end of the quarter. So take a look through some other metrics. We can see that period over period, we're doing really well. We're well over 100% of attainment, but we're still performing not quite as well as we did in last quarter, sorry. Scroll down, see a little bit about the health of our pipeline. And then the important part, how are my individual reps performing? So I can see that I have lots of reps that are well over 100% of their quota attainment. I noticed that Betty here is well under her quota attainment for the quarter, but she's got a ton of upside. And I want to take a look and see, what's going on with Betty's opportunities. So I'm going to click into this sales rep deep dive. And this is going to give me some sales rep specific numbers. So I can see, what her quarterly quota attainment is here. I can see that she's got a lot of opportunities that are scheduled to close. So I want to make sure that that we really work hard on getting those to close. So I'm going to go ahead, and from here I'm just going to send Betty a Slack message using our Slack integration, and just tell her that I'd like to talk to her so we can get moving on this. Next, we'll move to our customer success dashboard. And here we can just see some numbers on how we're performing, what opportunities we have for renewals and upsells. And just some support ticket related metrics here as well. We're not going to spend too much time going through these. And finally, the Jira overview dashboard, which is what our product team is going to use to see how we're performing, how many tickets we have open, how our releases are progressing. So we can see new issues versus current issues, how many issues do we have open. And then I just want to show you an example of how you as an end user can interact with this data, to provide some information that maybe isn't here on the dashboard that's more relevant to your job. So I have this chart here that's issues open by week. And I'm going to go ahead and go into Looker's Explore interface by just clicking on the title. And the Explore interface is where users come to do all of their own data exploration, all of their slicing and dicing of data. This is also where all of the content that we've seen in all the dashboards is created in the Explore interface. So over here on the left is what we call the field picker. And Aaron had described our semantic data model, or LookML model. And this is the result of the work that the data analysts have done in the LookML model. These are all of the data values and metrics that are exposed to the end users. So when when an end user is interested in building their own report or modifying an existing report, they can just come in here and they can click on whatever information they're interested in to add it to the report. We have key metrics here so that if a user wants to know the number of issues that were open this month, they don't have to know how to calculate that or what the SQL is to generate that kind of query. All they do is just click on this, add it to their report. And so everybody in the company is going to be using not only the same definitions for all their metrics, but also the same names for all their metrics. So you don't have to worry anymore about having two people walk into a meeting with reports that show different values for the same metrics. So I'm going to customize this report a little bit rather than showing the issues open by week based on issue type. I'm more interested in seeing it by department just to make sure that we are staffing correctly for the end of the quarter. So I'm going to pivot this report on department, and I'm going to remove the issue type. And I'm going to go ahead and rerun this report. And then we'll be able to see, how these open issues are being allocated based on the department. So we have our dashboard team, our Explore team, and our model team. And then I'm going to customize this a little bit depending on the visualization type that you include here. And Looker provides several different visualization options that you can use for your reports. But for this one, this stack bar chart makes the most sense. I'm going to, first of all, I don't like this color combination, so I'm going to change this to a color scheme that I like better. And I'm also going to add some total labels just so I can have a better idea of scale here. So now that I've customized this chart in just the way that I want, there's several things that I can do with it. The first is I can save it as a look, and that's Looker terminology for a standalone report. I can save it to a new or existing dashboard. I could download this data. I could send it off to another coworker. Or if I wanted to get this delivered regularly to my inbox, I can go to the Save and Schedule interface, and I'm just going to call this open by department. I can save this new report either to the shared area, which means that other users would have access to this as well. I'm going to save this one to my personal area so that only I have access to it. And this is typically what you do with something that's just for your own personal use or for something that's still a work in process. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And this is going to bring me into Looker's scheduling interface. And you have the option to send this by email, as you would expect. But Looker also provides built-in integrations to about 24 other systems. And all these integrations are built on a really easy-to-use open source framework. So if you don't see the option that you want here, it's really easy to build it yourself. So I can either email this information to myself in one of several different formats, or if I wanted to save this data to cloud storage like Amazon S3 or Google Cloud Storage. If I wanted to send this via Slack, I could. If this was a data set that I had curated for doing some machine learning with, I could send it to a machine learning tool like Data Robot to start doing some predictive analytics with. So a number of different options of what you can do with this data. But I'm going to go ahead and schedule this as a visualization that gets sent to my inbox every day at 6 a.m. And then I'll be able to wake up, take a look at this, and see if I need to reallocate my resources as we move towards the quarter end. So that's all for my part of the demo. So I'm going to stop sharing and turn this back over.
All right, thank you, Emma, Aaron, and Bruce for the presentation and the demo. It's now time for Q&A. As a reminder, you can enter your questions into the Q&A panel. And I'll give a minute or two for people to enter questions. I see already a few have come in. But in the meantime, I wanted to talk to you about the early access program for Avalanche on Google Cloud. We just announced support for Google Cloud recently, and we have an early access program. For early access customers, you gain a lot of benefits. For instance, you have free usage of Avalanche on Google Cloud for 6 months, free technical onboarding support, and you'll have direct communication to Actian Engineering. So a lot of great benefits. If you're interested, I encourage you to get more information going to that website there. The URL. It is limited to first 10 customers, so I encourage you to act quickly. So I see that some questions have come in. Let me start with Aaron here. It's a question, how easy is it to implement Looker? Do you need to know SQL in order to interact with the Looker platform?
Sure. So, I mean, I think it's hard to exactly know how easy it'll be to implement Looker, but it will require, folks who do have SQL knowledge to implement it, as LookML is really an abstraction of SQL. So understanding how SQL works will be necessary to model the data. But if you don't have any folks who are able to do that, we have obviously a network of partners who can assist there. And then to actually consume data from Looker, you do not need to know how to use SQL because you'll be if you're interacting with the platform directly, you can just click and drop, and Looker will write the SQL for you, and really just return the results. Or you'll consume dashboards that already have those definitions selected.
Great, great. You just mentioned LookML. I see a question on that. Is Looker's modeling language LookML easy to pick up? What are the advantages? What are the advantages of using it?
I think LookML for someone who understands SQL should be not a huge learning curve. Basically, you're thinking about how you would abstract parts of a SQL query into definitions in the model itself. And then what was the second part of the question?
What are the advantages of using LookML?
Right. So the advantage of using LookML is that it's reusable. So instead of defining one-off queries for each report, you're defining all the business logic that can be reused throughout all reporting, which enables folks to self-serve, build their own reports from a trusted set of definitions versus having to go back to a data scene to develop one-off queries.
Great, thank you. Here's a question for Emma. You mentioned there's a free version of Avalanche on Google Cloud. Is there a free version of Avalanche available for Azure or AWS?
Yeah, so Actian offers a free version for $500 for free, or a 30-day limit on that for all of the platforms that we support. So if you visit actian.com, you'll see that free offer that's up there. And one other offer that we didn't touch on today, Dahe, was with respect to Snowflake. And we guarantee that we will cut your Snowflake bill in half. And that's something that our legal team stands behind. We do believe we'll beat their performance by about 10x at a much better price proposition. So anybody who's using Snowflake today, there's some cool stuff available in Avalanche that will really help with price performance if cost containment is an issue for you.
Oh, that's great. We have a question on competition. So how is Avalanche different from other solutions, specifically Snowflake? So maybe you can expand on that.
Yeah, sure. So the focus for Avalanche was to design a very good price performance proposition. So as I just mentioned, we can outperform Snowflake typically by somewhere in the order of 10x, but we do it at a really attractive price point. So we'll beat them on price performance quite significantly as well. So price performance is a real focus for us. Another area in which we're differentiated is the data integration capabilities that I demoed as part of the Avalanche platforms. That ability to take files, whether they're on your desktop or it's Parquet files sitting on S3, and pull that into the warehouse. That's all integrated with the platform. While Snowflake is really easy to spin up a warehouse, it comes to a screeching halt once you've got to figure out how you're going to get data into that warehouse. And that's a problem that we've solved with Avalanche. So those two differentiators are joined by a third, which is the fact that we can deploy Avalanche on premises and across clouds. Snowflake's a cloud-only solution. And what we do find is a lot of organizations that are looking at the cloud have, in many instances, particularly in healthcare and financial services, a data set that requires that it remains on premises because of regulatory compliance requirements. And we've got a solution that enables you to take the analytics to the data wherever that data may lie.
Sounds great. And another one for you, Emma. Does Avalanche work with other BI tools apart from Looker?
Yes. So we work best with Looker. It's a really nice integration. It marries well because it's available in the cloud. But yeah, we have connectors for all of the popular technologies, Power BI, MicroStrategy, Tableau, Excel, all of the standard ODBC and JDBC interfaces, Click. I mean, any visualization tool, data science and data engineering tool that you're using today is likely supported through our interfaces to Actian Avalanche. But the Looker integration is really simple to get started with and simple to use and really fast.
Great, thank you, Emma. We're near the top of the hour, so I think we'll close. Any questions that we didn't get to today, we'll reach out via email, make sure you have the answer. Great, thank you everyone for joining. And thank you, Emma, Aaron, and Bruce again for presenting and demoing as well. As a call to action, you can start your free trial of the products that we were mentioned today. Avalanche, go to actian.com, and looker.com. And you'll be receiving a recording of this webinar later this week. All right, thank you and have a great day.